My mother-in-law laughed every time she saw me drawing. My husband just smiled and told me to grow up. 1 year later, the same drawings changed my life forever. I am Emily Carter. I am 30 years old, and for 7 years I have been married to a man named Ryan. I used to think our marriage was simple, the way people think a house is solid just because it has not fallen down yet. I was wrong about that, but it took me a long time to understand how wrong. I have always loved to draw. Not portraits, not anything serious in the way people mean when they use that word. I drew for children. Rabbits in raincoats. Foxes who were afraid of thunder. Little girls who could fly if they believed hard enough. It was never about becoming famous. It was about the quiet feeling I got when a blank page slowly turned into something alive under my pencil. It calmed me. It made the noise in my head go still. Ryan's mother, Linda, never understood that feeling, and she never tried to. Linda is 58 years old, and she has spent her whole life believing that softness is a weakness and that a woman's worth is measured by how loudly she can assert herself in a room. She would walk into our living room in the evening, see me bent over my sketchbook with a cup of tea going cold beside me, and she would laugh. Not a warm laugh. A short, sharp sound, like a door closing. "Still playing with crayons?" she would say, and she would look at Ryan when she said it, waiting for him to laugh too. And he did, sometimes. Not cruelly, not the way his mother did. His was quieter, almost apologetic, but it still stung, because it told me exactly where he stood. He never told her to stop. He never said, "Mom, this matters to her." Instead, he would sit beside me on the couch, glance at the page, and say something like, "Maybe spend that time doing something useful, Em. You could be taking a course. Building your resume. Something real." Something real. As if the hours I spent giving a fox a scarf and a nervous smile were not real. As if the joy I felt was an illusion I needed to be corrected out of. I want to be fair to Ryan, because even now, after everything, I do not think he was a monster. He loved me, in the only way he knew how to love, which was cautiously, and always with one eye on his mother's approval. Linda raised him alone after his father left, and she never let him forget what that cost her. He grew up believing that keeping the peace with her was the same thing as being a good son, and later, the same thing as being a good husband. Every time there was a conflict between his mother and me, no matter how small, no matter how clearly she was in the wrong, it ended the same way. He would sigh, rub his forehead, and say, "Just let it go." I heard that sentence so many times over 7 years that I started to feel it in my chest before he even said it. Just let it go. Let go of what exactly? My feelings. My hobby. My sense that I mattered as much in that house as she did. Every time, I let a little more go, until there was almost nothing left in my hands. The strange thing about being worn down slowly is that you do not notice it happening. Nobody hands you a single devastating blow. Instead, it is 1,000 small ones, spread out over years, disguised as jokes, as advice, as love. And somewhere in the middle of all those small blows, I stopped believing in myself. I began to agree with them. I would look at my own drawings and hear Linda's voice before I even heard my own thoughts. Still playing with crayons. I would look at a finished illustration I was proud of, and instead of feeling joy, I would feel embarrassed, like a child caught doing something silly in front of adults. One night, I sat on the floor of our bedroom with a stack of sketchbooks in front of me, years of work, hundreds of little worlds I had built page by page, and I told myself it was time to be an adult about this. I told myself Ryan was right, that his mother was right, that a 30-year-old woman drawing foxes in raincoats was not something to build a life around. I put every sketchbook into a box, and I put the box on the top shelf of our closet, behind the winter coats, where I would not have to see it. I stopped drawing. For months I did not pick up a pencil. I told myself I felt lighter, more mature, more like the woman Linda always said I should be. But at night, when the house was quiet, I felt something else. An ache, low and constant, like a room in my chest with the lights turned off. The end came on an ordinary Tuesday, which is somehow the part that still surprises me. I always imagined that if my marriage broke, it would break during something dramatic. Instead, it was a small thing. Linda had come over for dinner, and she made an offhand comment about how I had finally grown out of that silly little phase. And how proud she was that I was acting like a real woman now. I remember looking at Ryan, waiting for him to say something, anything, to acknowledge that the thing she was mocking had once meant everything to me, and that giving it up had not been growth, it had been surrender. He did not say anything. He just nodded along with her, the way he always did, and when I brought it up later that night, when I finally let the years of swallowed words come out of my mouth all at once, he did what he always did. He sighed. He rubbed his forehead. And he said it one more time. Just let it go, Em. Something in me finally did not let it go. Something in me, instead, let go of him. I packed a bag that night. Not out of anger, though there was plenty of that underneath. It was quieter than anger. It was clarity. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment across town, the kind of place with a leaky faucet and a radiator that clanked in the mornings, and for the first time in years, I was completely alone with my own thoughts. And no one was there to tell me what those thoughts were worth. The first few weeks were hard in a way I had not expected. I missed the noise of a shared home, even the parts of it that had hurt me. I sat in my new apartment some nights and cried, not because I wanted to go back, but because I was grieving the version of my life I thought I was going to have. It was on one of those quiet evenings, while I was unpacking the last box from the move, that I found them. My sketchbooks, still wrapped in the same faded t-shirt I had used to protect them, sitting at the bottom of a box marked winter clothes in my own handwriting. I remember sitting down right there on the floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and opening the first one. The fox in the raincoat was still there, waiting for me, exactly where I had left him. I do not know how long I sat there turning pages. An hour, maybe more. I looked at drawings I had made when I was 23, and drawings from just before I stopped, and something in me that had gone quiet for a long time started to stir again. I did not feel embarrassed anymore. I felt something closer to recognition, like running into an old friend I had almost convinced myself I never needed. I picked up a pencil that night for the first time in almost a year. I did not draw anything new. I just sat with the old pages, tracing a line here, adding a small detail there, letting my hand remember what it used to know. A few weeks later, on a whim, without any real plan or expectation, I photographed a handful of my favorite illustrations and posted them online. I did not tell anyone in my family. I did not think anyone outside of a small corner of the internet would ever see them. I was not trying to prove anything to Linda, or to Ryan, or even to myself, not really. I think I just wanted my little foxes and rabbits and flying girls to exist somewhere outside of a showbox in a closet. For a while, nothing happened, and I was almost relieved about that. It meant I could keep drawing quietly, without pressure, the way I used to before anyone ever told me it was childish. Then, one afternoon, I received a message from a woman I did not recognize. Her name was attached to a small, tasteful profile picture, and after a moment of searching, my stomach dropped. She was a children's book author, moderately well known in the industry, someone whose books I had actually read as inspiration years earlier without ever imagining she would know my name. She said she had come across my illustrations by accident, through a mutual connection, and that she could not stop thinking about the fox in the raincoat. She said the piece she was currently writing, a story about a nervous little creature learning to be brave during a storm, felt like it belonged with my art, as if the two had been made for each other without either of us knowing it. She asked if I would be interested in illustrating her next book. I read that message for times before I believed it was real. I said yes before I had time to talk myself out of it, before the old voice in my head, the one that sounded suspiciously like Linda, could tell me I was not good enough, that this was foolish, that real women did not chase things like this. For once, I did not let that voice finish its sentence. The work that followed was harder than anything I had done before, but it was the kind of hard that felt like growth instead of erosion. Long nights, tight deadlines, revisions that made me question every line I drew, and underneath all of it, a joy I had almost forgotten I was capable of feeling. When the book was finally finished, when I held the first printed copy in my hands and saw my own name in small letters on the cover, illustrated by Emily Carter, I sat in my apartment and cried again, but it was a completely different kind of crying than before. The book found its way into the hands of readers faster than either of us expected. Parents shared photos of their children falling asleep with it clutched against their chest. Teachers wrote to the author to say they were using it in their classrooms to talk about courage. Within a few months, it was being called one of the standout children's books of the year, and my inbox filled with messages from other authors, other publishers, other people who wanted to know if the woman behind that fox in the raincoat was available for more work. I was. Over the following year, everything shifted in a way that still feels slightly unreal when I describe it out loud. I signed with a literary agent. I illustrated a second book, then a third. A major publishing house offered me a contract that would have made the version of me sitting on that closet floor a year earlier weep with disbelief. I was invited to speak at a small illustrators conference, and then a larger one. I started waking up every morning not dreading the day, but wondering what small world I would get to build before the sun went down. I want to be honest and say that success did not erase the years before it. There were still nights when Linda's voice crept into my head uninvited. Still moments when I caught myself hesitating over a drawing, waiting for someone to tell me it was silly. But each time, it grew a little quieter, drowned out slowly by every reader who told me my work had meant something to them, by every child's drawing sent to me in the mail. Copied from my own illustrations with crayons pressed so hard into the paper that you could feel the joy behind them. I heard, through mutual friends, that Ryan and Linda had seen the books eventually. Everyone in that part of my old life had, at some point, walked past a display in a bookstore, or scrolled past an article, or been shown a copy by someone who did not know the story behind it. I imagine it in pieces, because I was not there to see most of it myself, except for one moment. A friend told me that Ryan had walked into a bookstore downtown one afternoon, the kind of ordinary errand he used to run all the time when we were married, and had stopped cold in front of a large display near the entrance. Stacks of my books were arranged in careful pyramids. A poster nearly as tall as him showed one of my illustrations blown up larger than life, the fox in the raincoat looking out over the shop with wide, hopeful eyes. A sign nearby announced an upcoming signing event. And there on every single cover, in letters he must have read 100 times without truly seeing them before, was my name. Illustrated by Emily Carter. I do not know exactly what went through his mind as he stood there. I was not there to watch his face. But I have imagined it more than once, the quiet, sinking realization that the thing he had spent years dismissing with a smile and a sigh, the thing his mother mocked over dinner while he nodded along, had become the entire foundation of the life I was now living without him. I imagine him standing very still in front of that display, understanding, perhaps for the first time, that every just let it go had been a small door closing on something that was never actually worthless. It had only ever been worthless in the story he and his mother told about it. I did not go looking for that moment of vindication, and if I am honest, I do not need it anymore. I have my own life now, built page by page, the same slow, patient way I built every fox and every rabbit and every flying girl who ever came out from under my pencil. I have mornings that belong entirely to me, evenings spent drawing simply because I want to, and a career that grew out of the exact thing I was once told to be ashamed of. Sometimes, when I am signing books for children at an event, a small hand will reach up holding out their own copy, the pages already soft from being read too many times to count, and I will crouch down to their level and ask them what their favorite part was. Their answers are never about grammar or plot structure. They talk about the fox, about how brave he was even though he was scared, about how the raincoat made them feel like they could be brave too. And in those moments, I understand something I could not have understood 7 years ago, sitting on our old living room couch while Linda laughed and Ryan told me to grow up. The dream everyone calls a waste of time might become the life you were meant to live. Has anyone ever made you doubt your dream?